Then comes the most famous time the Prophet said this hadith, which was where? In the Battle of Tabuk. Now, Amir al-Mu'mineen, as we all know, was probably the deciding factor between victory and loss in every single battle prior to Tabuk. If you were to look, and we're very familiar with it, alhamdulillah, but just as a quick recap, we look at the Battle of Badr, Amir al-Mu'mineen alone killed more than 35 people. The narrations mention 70 people were killed from the opposition, 47 were killed by Ali ibn Abi Talib alone, and the rest were killed by every other member together. How many people were in Badr? 313, which means it took 312 people to kill less than half of what Amir al-Mu'mineen did. Uhud, we all know exactly what happened. They ran away, leaving Rasulullah to die, while Amir al-Mu'mineen on his own stood there and defended the Holy Prophet. Khandak, they didn't even want to go forward in Khandak. Forget running away. Amr ibn Abdul al-Amri, when he jumped over the trench and came towards the Prophet, and he said in the most disrespectful manner, Muhammad, is there anybody that will silence me? Then he would turn towards the companions and he would say, I thought this guy promised you Jannah, right? He said that if you die fighting us kuffar, you go to Jannah, yes? Come here, who wants Jannah? But Amir al-Mu'mineen says that they were so still that if you were to place a bird on their head, the bird would not fly away. That's the example that our Imam gave. Yeah, what happened? He said, بَرَدَ الْإِيمَانُ كُلُّ إِلَى الْكُفْرِ كُلِّهِ. Faith in its entirety is going against disbelief in its entirety. Then he says what? ضَرَبَ عَلِي فِي يَوْمِ الْخَنْدَقِ أَفْضَلُ مِنْ عِبَادَةِ الثَّقَلَيْنِ. The one strike of Amir al-Mu'mineen is greater than all the worship of human and jinns until the Day of Judgment. Why? Because that strike saved Islam. Had that strike not occurred, there's a huge possibility that the Muslims would have gone astray and Islam wouldn't have reached us today. So when we are praying to Allah today, be grateful and thankful to Ali ibn Abi Talib and his strike at the Battle of Khandaq. And the same thing applies to Khaybar. They all went, they fought, they lost, they came back. They blamed the people with them, the people blamed their leaders. Until the Prophet called Amir al-Mu'mineen and said, what? غَيْرَ فَرَّارِ. He doesn't run away. He will fight tomorrow, and Amir al-Mu'mineen attained victory. So you know in the battles, he was the forefront, he was the strongest. So when the Battle of Tabuk came, you wouldn't automatically think that the Prophet is going to take Imam Ali, right? Because he's the one who's bringing victory. However, the Prophet didn't take Imam Ali to Tabuk. The Prophet kept him behind. The Prophet said, yeah, you're not going with me. I want you to stay in Medina. So, what did the Sahaba do? What they always did, they came to Imam Ali and taunted him again. They looked at Amir al-Mu'mineen and said, we're going to war. But the Prophet isn't taking you. Is everything all right between you guys? So Amir al-Mu'mineen goes back to the Prophet and he says, Ya Rasulullah, you are all going to war and you are leaving me at home with the women and children. Is everything okay? The Prophet says, Ya Ali, I need you to stay behind as my deputy and my vizier and represent me whilst I go off to war. But then he also told Amir al-Mu'mineen, this war isn't even going to take place. But don't worry, if it was taking place, you'd be with us. But I'm leaving you here as my deputy. Amir al-Mu'mineen says, and what's the reason? He says, بِمَنْزَلَةِ هَارُونَ مِن مُوسَى. Because you hold that position and status to me that Harun held with Musa. Let's look at what the position was. Nabi Musa is going away to Mount Sinai for how long? 30 days. What does he do? He leaves Harun in his place as his deputy in the city. And in fact, if you look at the Quran, Nabi Musa's words were, Ikhlifni, which means, oh Allah, make Harun my Khalifa. Whilst I go to the mountain to converse with Allah. Nabi Musa goes for 30 nights and 30 days. Allah extends it by 10. He stays for 40 nights and 40 days. In those last 10 days, they all abandoned Nabi Harun alayhi salam. And there was an individual by the name of Samari. He got them all to worship the golden calf. Just like that, the same thing happened with our Prophet. Rasulullah is saying, Ya Ali, Nabi Musa went away. I am going away. He left Harun as a vizier. I am leaving you as a vizier. Or whether you are my deputy in this world and in the hereafter, Ya Ali, you are going to represent me. So Amir al-Mu'mineen stayed behind. The battle didn't occur. Few more similitudes between the two. We all know that Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein alayhimus salam's name in Arabic is Hassan and Hussein. But Nabi Harun had two sons. One was called Shabban, one was called Shabir. And if you translate Shabbar and Shabir from Hebrew into Arabic, it translates to Hassan and Hussein. So just like how Amirul Mu'mineen has two sons, Nabi Harun had two sons with the same name. Just as Nabi Musa went to Mount Sinai and left Harun alayhi salam, our Prophet went to Tabuk and left Amirul Mu'mineen. And the final similitude is we're all aware of the fact that our Prophet built the mosque and the companions' doors used to open around the mosque. Until one day Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, Ya Rasulullah, close all the doors that are opening to this mosque except the door of your brother Ali ibn Abi Talib, for he can enter as he pleases. Why? Because the Sahaba unfortunately were coming in and out of the mosque in the state of najasa. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala closed those doors permanently. But he only left one door open. And that was the door of Amirul Mu'mineen. He can enter. Why? They've been thoroughly purified and blessed. They can enter as they please. If you look at the books of history, Nabi Musa also built the house of God. He also had their companions' doors opening into their mosque. You can call it a mosque or a worship, place of worship. He also was ordered by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Ya Musa, close all the doors except the door of your brother Harun. For he can enter as he pleases, nobody else is allowed. Just like that, Rasulullah did the same example with Amirul Mu'mineen. Then you'll have some people come forward and say, lekin, you know, the first Khalifa, his window was left open. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala closed all the doors, but for him, he left his window open. Masha. Who enters in from a window? There is Sharif bande hunde ne? There is joy to come from the door. Therefore, if you want to attain the knowledge that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had given Rasulullah, then you have to go to the door of the city of knowledge, and that is none other than Ali ibn Abi Talib.
Nara Hadari.
So he said this on many occasions. So in order to prove that Amirul Mu'mineen was the rightful successor to the Prophet, among many other verses, used the Hadith of Manzila, where the Prophet said, Ya Ali, your position to me is like that of Harun to Musa, because you'll be surprised at how much similitude is between Nabi Harun and Amirul Mu'mineen alayhi salam.